Good afternoon and welcome to our program for this afternoon with Willie Varela, who's visiting us from El Paso. I'm Sean Noriega, the director of the center here, for the staff back there that don't know me. Going to keep this brief, light. Get Willie up here. He's going to give a presentation and show some of his work. We've just released a DVD of Super 8 and video work that he's done over the last 40 years, kind of a sampling. And by way of personal introduction, I met him when I was doing research on this concept of Chicano cinema. And it seemed like a very manageable category if you think of feature films, because there were only a dozen, and there's maybe 2 dozen now. And then I came across a reference to Willie Varela, and it turned out he had made several hundred films. Now they were all in Super 8, so they're basically about the width of a linguine.
Fettuccine.
Fettuccine, yes. Getting hungry now. And then they were about 3 minutes long, some were longer. But he had just completed his kind of major work, which was a feature-length Super 8 film called Making Is Choosing, among many other subtitles, and had just begun working in video as well when we met. So I've known him for about 25 years, curated a retrospective of his work at the Whitney Museum. His work is shown widely, and probably more to the point, living largely in El Paso with a brief stint in San Francisco, he's been a major figure in public programming of avant-garde film. And in the 1970s, in fact, his invitation to Carolee Schneemann to come in and show her work in El Paso, in many ways really led to the first kind of conservative backlash against the arts that led to censorship throughout the 70s and the 80s that became known as, I'm forgetting what it was called, Willie, but the bad thing.
Yeah.
The we don't like art thing
Right.
that led to the decimation of public art funding. I don't blame Willie.
Thank God.
I don't think he intended that. That's a joke. But what was really important is that when you look at what he was doing in El Paso, he managed to bring almost every major avant-garde filmmaker from around the world at that time to El Paso to show the work, and was part of something that was set up much earlier in the 40s by people like Maya Deren, of establishing local film cultures for non-commercial work. His archives are at the Stanford University. It's a very important collection in terms of understanding Chicano artists' participation in the avant-garde, but also the social networks that were present among a set of artists, literally again around the world. And I just purchased a compendium of correspondence that Carolee Schneemann published, and there's 2 letters in there from Willie, kind of documenting the kind of plan for this screening, which I think was what, 76 or 70?
Yes.
Somewhere around there. So I could go on all day, but instead I'd rather have Willie come up, and I'm really excited. It's the first time we've seen each other in 20 years. He doesn't look at all like his email. And give him a chance to introduce his own influences, and then showcase his work, and then we're going to keep the program under an hour so that there can be a chance for discussion and reception eating at the end. So thank you. Willie.
Yeah, come on here. Okay, well, Mike told me to talk into this microphone. It's kind of a unidirectional microphone. My name is Willie Varela, and I'm from El Paso, Texas. I just got in this afternoon. And you're probably wondering, who the hell is this guy? You know? You really probably are. You probably don't know much about me. You probably don't know much about the avant-garde, to use that term, or experimental or anything like that. But I can tell you that there are only, well, the avant-garde was a very important part of the development of American cinema post-World War II. And I'm going to show a couple of early films by a man who was probably the most important and certainly a very seminal figure in the avant-garde, and that is Stan Brakhage. Have any of you ever heard of Stan Brakhage? Okay, some of you, good, okay. So I'm going to show a couple of pieces that revolve around my basic theme of what I want to talk about today, and that is the drive to create. And that is something that I think is very important, because the motivation to work in this field is usually done by only certain kinds of people, you know? Everybody who studies film, it seems like most everybody who studies film, I think legitimately wants to get into the business, you know, because the business is where money is, where recognition is, where the facilities, the resources to create something that will go out to a mass audience are. But if you're interested in a certain kind of film, there is a certain drive to make that kind of film that can't be stopped. It can't be diverted. It can't be put off onto something else. And I think that Brakhage, for example, who started making his films in the 50s and worked literally up until moments before he died in the hospital in Victoria, Canada, on a series called the Chinese series, where he was scratching on film with his fingernails, and he died there, unfortunately, only 3 months after having been retired from UC Boulder. And he moved up there with his wife, his second wife, and their 2 children. And it was a very sad situation. He had a recurrence of the bladder cancer that he had to dealt with in the mid-90s, and it seemed like everything was all right, and then it came back virtually overnight and killed him within just a couple of months. And so we lost a very great artist at the age of 70. Orson Welles also died at 70, you know, and I'm hoping not to join that club. I'm 64 right now, and I feel like hell some of the time, you know, so I'm hoping I don't join that club, you know. I want to make it past 70 at least, you know. But so I wanted to show you a couple of examples of films that are very simple in their conception, perhaps not in their making, especially something like Mothlight. But the other film is called Cat's Cradle, and these are 2 short films that show what can be done if you have a certain type of a very active imagination and you are probing subject matter that Hollywood rarely takes on. When I say Hollywood, I mean the commercial fictive narrative. You know, I don't have anything against Hollywood because I go to the movies a lot. And Brakhage, the last time I visited Brakhage was in let's see, the year 2000, 3 years before he died, and Stan used to carry around all the showings of the local movies in his wallet, because he would go to movies all the time, you know, and so I was also interested in film, in movies and all that sort of thing, and so I've been a movie watcher all along. It's not a question of being of thinking perhaps, oh well, I'm too good for this or I'm too good for that, or that's not interesting, etc. But rather the ritual of going into a darkened space and seeing these light projections, and sometimes you see something that moves you a little bit, and a good deal of the time you see things that don't move you. But I wanted to start off with a film called Mothlight that Stan made in the early 60s. And the story behind this is a very simple one. Stan had no money. He had no money to make a film, but he wanted to make a film. He had that drive, as I said, to create something. And so he got a couple of pieces, well, lengthy pieces of Mylar tape that are used to splice film. And he went out around his house and he harvested twigs from trees and branches and spider webs and leaves and all that sort of thing, and put them between these pieces of Mylar. and he made a film, obviously a film that was probably very difficult to print, but he made it. Western Cine there, they managed to put it through and they printed it, and it is because, so let's take a look first at Mothlight, and I want you to think about, you know, the amount of work, obviously, that went into this. I have to emphasize that it wasn't haphazard. There were ways in which Stan structured these little bits, this detritus of nature around his house, and the way that he structured it so that it would be a real moving picture. All right, so let's take a look at Mothlight. See if I can. Okay, so that film I think is a very good example of a film that was made for next to no money, but was made out of need. You know, Brakhage needed to make something, and this is something that is very, very difficult to quantify. It's very difficult to always say, well, you know, I'm going to go out and make something. I'm going to express myself. And I think Stan was kind of beyond that. He was beyond expressing himself. He was beyond thinking to himself, well, I'm going to make a work of art. You know, he was beyond these kinds of things, or this way of thinking, and was more involved with the need to create, the need to see things. That was very important to Stan, was the seeing, and that's what eventually, at least initially, very much influenced me was this need to see more deeply than just simply looking. Obviously, we know the difference between looking and seeing, but Stan really took it to another level. All right, and also, of course, if you consider the aspect of silence, silence is another thing that we are not used to seeing in films, and very often it can make us perhaps a little bit uncomfortable, but there is music in that film. There is a kind of eye music. There is with the rhythms and all of that that help to create a different experience and remind us that we're actually seeing a movie, and that we are seeing a very, very particular interaction with nature. All right, this next film, this will be the last Brakhage film, but I wanted to show you something that he did in a more kind of representational realm. And this is a film called Cat's Cradle, and it's very rapidly cut, and just involves a visit with some friends and their home and so on and so on. But it's, and again, you might think, well, it's very banal, it's very mundane material, but it isn't. That's not the way Brakhage makes it. Brakhage makes it more, I think, interesting, and certainly transcends this whole thing that, well, it's just somebody's house or whatever. So this film is called Cat's Cradle. So anyway, those are the first two Brakhage films that I wanted to start off with. As you can see, these films are very, they're very simple in terms of the environment, but they are not simple in terms of structure. You notice a very kinetic type of cutting, something very fast. Lots of beautiful work with color and light and shadow and all that sort of thing. And this style, this way of approaching material became very, very dominant in the 50s and the 60s, and a lot of filmmakers made, avant-garde filmmakers, experimental filmmakers, approach material in this way. And when I started making films, or trying to make films in 1971, I really didn't know anything about Brakhage. I had never seen the work. I really didn't know exactly what I was going to do. I just knew that I wanted to try to make movies, try to do something with the moving image medium. And during the course of maybe another 3 or 4 years, I got to see a handful of other Brakhage films, as well as films by other noted filmmakers. And I started to try to really kind of forge my own style, and it took me a good while to get there. I didn't want to just be a Brakhage copier or a Brakhage imitator, but he certainly influenced my work. And the next thing we're going to see is a film of mine called, we're going to see 3 short films, Becky's Eye, Bent Light, and The Last Look. They are all silent films, and they are somewhat in the tradition of Brakhage's work, and they seem somewhat in the style of Stan's work, but then again, not necessarily, because they were, it was impossible to, okay, it was impossible to imitate somebody whose work I really hadn't seen. But I gradually found my way to a certain way of working, to a certain way of seeing. Okay, these films were somewhat in the style of what Brakhage was trying to do, but at the same time I think they were very different because they had to do with my own rhythms and the subject matter that I picked and how I composed. I had a different method of camera movement, different styles of composition, but still with the basic concept of the drive to create and having, in a sense, a very distant mentor in Stan Brakhage. So I want to take us to a sound film now. There's some sound work, and this one is called His Hidden Presence. Are there any questions so far? Anybody have any questions? Questions? Yeah.
Yeah, I just noticed in the examples that you showed of your work, and then also in Brakhage, there's this recurring like imagery of nature and that particular subject matter, like nature and light. I wonder if you could talk about like that subject matter, maybe in terms of your own practice.
Well, I think first of all, I'm not terribly interested in nature. It is. I mean, I think about it as a concept, as a problem, as a thing that exists, but I don't really get very involved with nature. I don't camp. I don't do any of that stuff. I don't go out hunting. My thing is to look for the nearest Ramada Inn with a microwave oven and a color TV. And that's pretty much it. But it wasn't so much that like for Stan. Nature was a crisis because he lived up in the mountains of Boulder, up in UC Boulder, and he lived there because his wife wanted to live there. One of the people that you see in Cat's Cradle, one of the women there, is his wife. She had 5 children by him, and they were married for 33 years, and then they got divorced in the mid 80s. And I asked Stan, well, what happened? Why did you guys get divorced? And he said, oh, it was over a grackle. Do you guys know what a grackle is? It's a bird. It's a certain type of very annoying bird that Jane insisted, that was the name of his first wife, Jane insisted on keeping in the house. And I guess for Stan, that was the last straw, and they got divorced. And in terms of nature, I remember, that, like I said, the last time that I visited him, just before he died in 2000, he told me that he hated the mountains. He hated the snow. He was just afraid that if some bug bit him, that he was going to get some kind of rare disease, or he was going to fall off a mountainside, or an avalanche would fall on him or something. And he just, as a way of coping with his disdain and dislike of nature, he worked with nature. He would go out and film it. And you're talking about a man who made about 380 films. And so that's a hell of a lot of material to wade through to try to get at a lot of his themes and in terms of what he was doing. Just to show you, in terms of just talking about being an experimental filmmaker, just to show you how difficult it is, and how in certain ways, at least economically, financially, it is very unrewarding. Okay, Stan worked for 50, almost 60 years, right? He dies virtually broke, and what happens after he dies? I think it's MoMA, Whitney, and another museum bought every single one of his prints. Bought a print of every single one of his films for their collections, And all the money that he perhaps could have made off of those prints, were of absolutely no use to him because, he was dead. And it was a very, very strange situation. Very strange situation to have happened to him because he struggled all his life for money. I'm struggling for money right now. I think just about most of us are, unless you're, one of the Koch brothers or, that guy in Mexico with, I don't know his name, but he supposedly is the richest man in the world or something. Slim, yeah. So we're going to see a film here that is a sound film, finally. It's called His Hidden Presence. And it's inspired by a book that my own mother gave me on God. You know, because I'm a product of a Jesuit high school training, and you know, whatever you're going to go one of two ways when you go to a Catholic school. You either become very religious and you stay with the religion, you know, or you say, you know what, I've had enough of this, and that's what happened to me. I just became a very, very lapsed Catholic, and I wouldn't even say that I'm a Catholic much these days, but. This book was called His Hidden Presence because, according to my mother, okay, this is interesting, she said that God hides from us. Have you ever heard that? Any of you ever heard that? God hides from us. And it is our job, if we truly love Him, to search for Him. And so I thought, what a weird concept. And then I started to put together some footage that showed a little bit of the dichotomies of American society and showed how different things really are in the real world, as opposed to this idea of that God is out there, you know. After all, what is the foundation for religion? It's faith. Faith, and faith implies that one believes in something that one can't see. And that fortunately or unfortunately, depending on which side of the fence you are, whether you're Christopher Hitchens or Pope Francis, you know, you either see it one way or the other. God is everywhere and is manifest in everyone and in everything. Or you're Christopher Hitchens, who died a couple of years ago of cancer. He was an atheist, and he just felt that the world was deterministic and was really run by people's actions or inactions. So let's take a look at His Hidden Presence. Let's see if I get this right.
By His images you shall. His images.
just for love, you know, they're making love and then they're not just for love, you know, they're making love and then they're just having sex. They're not just for love, you know, they're making love and then they're just having sex.
Kills me the language of romance novels. They never kind of come out and say what two people are doing. I mean, the ocean pounded against the shore. Right, he had to play with her. Me? Where do you boys go from here? Kills me the language. My winter will soon be over. I shall soon be done with the